Hello there. Welcome to the Beneski Museum of Natural History at Amherst College. Fred Venn, and my guest today is Ben Gilsdorf, class of 21. He'll be spending some time today walking us through birds. In particular, his favorite, the ivory-billed woodpecker. Well, let's kick it over to Ben.
Well, are we good?
Are we good?
All right. If we get started.
Well, I'll just say welcome to the Beneski Museum, and it's my honor to introduce Ben Gilsdorf. Ben is going to be taking some time to introduce a little bit about our birds. Birds of a feather, I guess, is our title for today. And there's a number of birds and bird relations that we'll have a chance to walk through, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Just be careful that Ben might get carried away with our ivory-billed woodpecker, but that's a whole different story. Ben.
That's actually all of the story, as we'll see today. Hello, everyone. My name is Ben. I am a senior here at Amherst College. I've been working at the Beneski since sophomore year. Very excited to be back and excited to welcome you all today, both virtually and I think some people are coming in person to learn about the bird species we have at the Beneski in our third installment of Fossil Fridays. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll have one of our many assistants read them out loud. I think our in-person guest is on their way. And then we'll have one of the assistants read it out loud, and I'll try to answer that expeditiously. But we're going to start today up. So if you've ever been to the Beneski, we're going to start on the main floor. We're going to talk about the more modern birds, and then we're going to work our way down and talk about birds' relationship to dinosaurs evolutionarily. So we're going to get started here with the bird box, as I like to call it, which has the Beneski Museum's collection of extinct bird species. In the middle, you can see the moa that we have. The moa was was because it is extinct, was a large flightless bird that lived in New Zealand that went extinct after the Maori and Polynesian peoples first arrived in New Zealand. So what's fascinating about New Zealand is that it has no large mammal species. And so the niches occupied by large mammal species in other places are taken up by birds in New Zealand. And so the moa, there were actually 7 species of moa, I believe, 7 or 9. And this moa is actually one of the shorter ones. They could get up to 2 meters tall, which is pretty insane if you think about it. This is a shorter species of moa. And there was some debate over whether the moa went extinct because of human predation primarily, or they were actually in decline at the time of human arrival, due to overpopulation perhaps, or disease on the island. But archaeological research has found most moa remains in large clusters in one place, which suggests they were hunted in bulk by humans. And that's the ultimate source of their extinction. When the moa went extinct, they also took with them the largest species of eagle that has ever lived on the planet. I can't remember, I think it's the Haas's eagle. They're about twice the size of the current largest eagle, which is the, oh my gosh, what is it called? They live in South America. The Harpy's eagle? Yeah, the Harpy eagle, which are in themselves very big. These eagles are up to 15 kilograms. They were gigantic and they would hunt moa. And so when moa population went, they actually took the Haas's eagle with them, which is sort of a double whammy of anthropogenic extinction.
Can I just add to
yes.
that? Because when the humans did first move in to that area and started to kill the moa, the hawks were losing, these eagles were losing access to their food source.
Yeah.
And they were beginning to go after the children.
Yeah.
And could actually lift a child up and carry a child away.
I saw there's a photo of a skull that I saw online, and they're gigantic. These were incredibly large birds, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Like condor-sized eagles, yeah. Let's see, and then I think we'll actually pivot around. I think I just want to dive right into the ivory-billed woodpecker. The 2 birds you can see right here.
This is the best.
The best view's actually over there. This is the ivory-billed woodpecker, which looks fairly familiar if you're at all an ornithologically inclined individual, because it looks very similar to the pileated woodpecker, which lives across the country. They both have sort of the red tuft at the top of their head, somewhat larger species of woodpecker compared to the hairy or the downy. But what's interesting about the ivory-billed is it's slightly smaller. If you look at the back, pileated, it's much more. You've got that white lower section of the wings and the ivory-billed that
We saw it in the museum.
Huge.
And then you can see that's a male up here, a female down there. The ivory-billed woodpecker's historic range, they don't know super well because it went extinct largely before modern ornithology was introduced. But they lived in old growth forests in the south, with their range extending northward into West Virginia, perhaps into Indiana, along the Mississippi River to the west. They lived in these growth forests that were then in the late 1800s and early 1900s aggressively logged as America expanded. And so they lost a lot of habitat. The last officially confirmed sighting was in 1944 in Louisiana, in a plot of land owned by the Singer Company, which made sewing machines. The plot of land was owned by the Singer Company, but they had a logging lease with the company out of Chicago. Once a professor in Louisiana heard that the bird was there, he went and got the last confirmed footage of it. But unfortunately, the Audubon Society's attempt to purchase the land was denied by the Singer Company. And since then, there have been no officially confirmed sightings of the ivory-billed woodpecker, but there have been a lot of sort of controversial sightings that have never been upheld by any ornithological body. So there, in 1967, there were some hurricanes that hit Florida. And in the wreckage of the hurricane, they found an ivory-billed woodpecker feather, but they had no proof that they could date it from around then. So while it's unlikely that it would have been pre-1944, they can't say for certain that it wasn't. And so that doesn't stand up as confirmation. In the late 1900s or the 1990s, there were some sightings again in Louisiana that led a group of researchers out there. And there's a 4-second video taken, I think 2006. I think it might actually be in Arkansas or Louisiana at the border of those two states. That prompted the Audubon Society to purchase 100,000 acres of land to try and protect it in case the bird was there. The video purportedly shows the ivory-billed woodpecker because the flight pattern is different from the pileated woodpecker. So ivory-billed woodpeckers take a very sort of majestic swoop up. So there's a tree like this, they'll fly in at a low angle and land like that, whereas the pileated comes in at a much shorter, sort of on a shorter trajectory. And so they claim that the wing pattern that you can see, plus the trajectory of flight, is proof that it is an ivory-billed woodpecker. But there was I don't think the evidence was satisfactory enough for anyone to confirm that it was alive. And then there's been lots of studies based on their call. So they have a very sort of unique call. It sounds like the Wikipedia description is like a Kent sound or a haunt sound, a very sort of shrill, monotone, singular noise that they make. But it also sounds a lot like other birds. They've even confused it with the blue jay. And so just recording sounds of it making a call are not super conclusive. Other scientists claim to have found markings on trees that are consistent with the way ivory-billed woodpeckers peck for beetles in trees. But none of it has ever been combined with, photographic evidence and the calls and this evidence that is conclusive enough for them to say that the ivory-billed woodpecker is alive. However, it is not classified as fully extinct. I think it's classified by the American Ornithological Union as probably or most likely extinct, but not officially extinct. There's also there's two subspecies actually. One is the North American and one lives in Cuba. And the Cuban one has been a source of a lot of interest lately because there's many more old growth forests in Cuba left than there are in the southeastern United States. And so there's been a lot of hope that might be where they could find the remainder of the ivory-billed woodpecker. But so far they have not been able to come up with anything conclusive enough there either. I personally believe that it's still alive. I have a lot of faith in these one-off theories. I think, the United States is an incredibly large country. These birds are very rare. I will concede that if they do exist, they are exceedingly rare to find. And so it makes sense that there's a lot of controversy over this. And because they have so much infamy around them, there's a lot of people who want to be the person who finds the ivory-billed woodpecker. And so you'll get problems where there'll be videos of an ivory-billed woodpecker sitting perfectly erect up in a tree, and people assuming that, oh, that's just a stuffed one that someone put in a tree and took a grainy photo of to try and get the cloud. And so it's a very controversial topic, but one that a lot of birders are very passionate about. I would consider myself among them. It's my favorite specimen to talk about in the Beneski's collection, partially because we have two wonderful examples of it. So if you live in Arkansas, Louisiana, anywhere really in the Southeast, and you've got some time on your hands, take a hike into the woods, bring some binoculars with you, look for the ivory-billed woodpecker, because if you find it and take phone cameras now are so much better than they were in the old days. So if you see it, you'll likely get a pretty good photo, and it could bring you ornithological fame. Some of the other birds we have in here, on the other side, if we come around, we have the passenger pigeon, whose story is pretty common. I think most people have heard about the plight of the passenger pigeon. There used to be so many of them in North America that when they would fly, they would block out the sun. But then they sort of were a chicken light, I guess is how you could describe them in terms of their meat. They were an incredibly cheap, abundant source of food. And so as eastern cities started to explode in population, the passenger pigeon became a popular source of groceries, I guess. And they were essentially hunted from abundancy to complete oblivion. And they're now extinct and have been extinct for about 100 years. So that's the passenger pigeon right there. And then over here we've got, trying to keep moving around and everyone, the great auk, which is called, the Latin name is actually penguinus, because they saw penguins later, European explorers did, and thought that the penguins looked like the auk. And so named penguins after the auk, but they're actually not even remotely related taxonomically. The auk lived in the Atlantic Ocean, sort of from Europe to North America. It was commonly used as a food source by Europeans, especially what do they call it? Fishing boats, whaling boats. They also used it as bait. We have an iPad problem. Oh, we're bringing it around.
We're just going to get a really close look.
Yeah, so it's got an incredibly large beak. They're very funny looking birds, I think. They're black and white. That's why we call penguins penguins. They name actually, I think I ascribe to the theory that it comes from the Welsh for white head. They had a little white nub on the top of their head. But yes, they were very sacred in a lot of Native American cultures. There were examples of chiefs being buried with hundreds of auk beaks alongside them. They would make capes out of the skin and feathers. But then as European expansion really began, huge fishing voyages went out. The auk became sort of the catch du jour if you wanted something to throw in the water to attract larger fish species or whale species, and they went extinct in the 1840s. It's another one of those for almost all these birds, if you read their story, you'll hear about the last one that was reported being shot immediately and turned into taxonomy or taxidermy. And so these birds, you'd see the last one living, and the instinct was to shoot them. But what is sort of tragic is these are all examples fairly recently of how human expansion and human interference with the natural world has caused a lot of bird-related extinctions. So the moa was in Polynesia, the ivory-billed woodpecker in North America, the gray auk in Europe and North America as well, the passenger pigeon also in North America. But they have all gone extinct because of human activity, which is something that we should, I think, be especially cognizant of nowadays as our climate is changing more and more by the day. So now we're going to work our way back in time and move from these modern birds to the sort of connecting piece between birds and dinosaurs, and we'll talk a little bit more about the evolutionary link between those two. So y'all follow me.
My thanks go out to Ben, and thank you for spending some time with us at the Beneski Museum Fossil Fridays, and we look forward to our next visit. Bye-bye.